Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be reviewing the Magene C606 GPS bike computer. The Magene C606 is the brand's new flagship GPS cycling computer and offers premium features not typically found at this price point. In terms of packaging, you can see very simple, nice glossy representation of the computer, white and gray branding on here. There's nice reflective Magene branding. The box itself looks a lot like a higher end cell phone design. So you have a sleeve and then the cardboard box in the inside. There's also additional specs here, and they do hint at multiple colors here, but I haven't seen them available online yet. Go ahead and open this up and we'll go over the specs. So you just slide this out first, and then you pull off the bottom. So retail price on this is $159, which is actually pretty affordable. You have a 2.8-inch color touchscreen, and that's typically a feature you don't see at these lower price points. You have turn-by-turn navigation with the color maps, and a 28-hour battery life when you use the endurance mode. You also have a Garmin mount, which is nice, so you can use literally any other mount on the market, and it's compatible with a lot of accessories already on the market. You have customizable displays. You have 10 different pages and up to 10 items per page, so with that larger screen, you really have a lot of options. As far as what comes with it, you can see you have the computer. We have the black version obviously here. You have a nice little guide here that shows you what the buttons do. And then a little accessory box. Pull that open. So here you can see you have a lanyard. Those are nice if you want to secure that. If it were to fall, you can secure this to your handlebar and prevent it from falling all the way to the ground. You have a USB Type-C charging cable, which is nice to see here. It's a nice modern interface, so you can use your existing cables or the one provided. You have a basic handlebar mount. So you can see two straps here, and then the simple, or two different length straps. So you have smaller and larger, and then a plastic mount. So this one simply rotates in place, and then you can hook these little O-rings around your handlebar. You also have an instruction manual that shows you how to get started in multiple languages, as well as a little advertisement for the Magene website. Now let's take a look at the weight of the Magene computer. So you can see the computer by itself. That comes in at 104 grams. The Magene 606 computer has a traditional rectangular profile with slightly rounded corners and an angled body. It's fairly bulky for a computer because it has a 2000 milliamp battery on the inside, which means it's fairly thick. It's 17.6 millimeters thick, 57 millimeters wide, and then it's 97 millimeters long. You do have a fairly large 2.8-inch color touchscreen, which is nice to see here. So you can see it's nice and large. You do have a glossy screen, which is a little bit annoying, but common with most GPS computers, with minimal bezels on the top and bottom. You have the Magene branding here on the top, Magene printed on the front, and then otherwise a nice black plastic body. The packaging on the computer seems to suggest there's a white and gray version, but I haven't seen that online yet. But it is nice that Magene does have some other colored computers on the market, as most products these days are all black. You can see you have 3 physical buttons. You have the power button on the front, and then 2 on the rear. They're not labeled, which is a little bit weird. So you can see there's no label where you traditionally see it here. They're just a little bit textured, and they're fairly large, so it is easy to feel even if you're wearing gloves. And then the front one is filled in with red to indicate it's the power button. But again, pretty big screen, especially at this price point, and it has gestures like swiping, and it seems to be pretty responsive, which is nice to see. It also has a pretty loud speaker here, so you can see the tones are loud, so you can get notifications and then other notifications with the beep to help you know what's coming. So even if you have a radar, it will beep at you when your car's coming. On the front here, you can see it's kind of beveled, and this is where there's a little bit of a plastic cover here. So if you pull that off, you can see USB Type-C charging cable port. That's nice to see. You still see Garmin computers with the kind of micro USB, but with this one, it's nicely inset. And then you just push down the cover and then make it flush. So pretty nice design, and because it's right up front, you won't accidentally leave it open. Otherwise, for mounting, you have a nice standard Garmin mount. So you can see these two tabs here, go into a corresponding base and you rotate it to lock it in place. It's a very standard mount design, so you can find a lot of third-party mounts. Magene only includes a standard handlebar mount, but I highly recommend getting an out front mount like the Topeak UTF or literally anything else on the market. There's tons of options, from plastic ones to aluminum ones, but it's a really nice design. You do have a lanyard connection too, so you can see this little hole here. You can use the optional lanyard to hold this in place, just in case this would accidentally fall off or if you don't tighten it all the way when you mount it. When you first launch a Magene app, you will get a little QR code, which requires you to pair this with the corresponding app. Once you've done that, then you should see this main screen. You can see we've already done a little bit of riding with this, so we already have our accumulated mileage and accumulated time. The home screen is pretty basic. You have the name, which is associated with the app once you sync, odometer, total time, everything's nice and touchscreen. You have your different profiles here, so you can actually use the OneLapFit here to add more. But we have the road and commute by default, any connected sensors, and then the main menu options underneath here. What's nice about this, the touchscreen is really responsive, so it's quite easy. You can do indoor training, so workout, simulated routes. You can load separate routes, so these are routes you've downloaded from the app and uploaded here. So you can see one of the big issues with this kind of setup is that you really can't zoom and you don't actually get a map background. You just kind of see an overview of your route. So here you can see a nice route, but I can't zoom into it and I can't do anything, which is a downside. It would have been nice if this was actually zoomable. You have some basic settings here, but of course you do have to use the app for most things. You have the sounds, phone pairing, Wi-Fi, which you actually do need to enable to get the maps. By default, the maps won't be here. So you need to enable the maps, and then under map, then you can see I've already loaded the USA version for my local region, but you would see a full map here once you have the Wi-Fi and you can select the one that corresponds to your location. You can set units, auto function, so the auto pause, auto lap features. Some other basic ones like navigation, card settings, and system. So firmware version, factory reset, percent memory. It's pretty simple to use, but obviously you have to use the app to really do more. You can also see your previous rides here, so you can go to history, but it is very basic again. So you can see a route I just did, basic specs here, and the lap information. You don't actually see the map or the route you did, which is kind of odd. If you want to do any analytics, you want to go to Strava or other apps instead. This one just gives you a basic overview. Once you want to actually do a route or do a ride, you actually have to select the profile first. You can't just press play like most apps. There's no default. You can see when I press play, it just doesn't do anything. So if I actually want to start, I select the profile. I can add a route here and then press start. Here I have auto pause, and obviously I'm not moving. So here I can see the pages. You can customize these via the app, and you can see a map view here. Some other downsides of this computer is the fact you can't really zoom out very much. So you can see you're really limited to just this kind of maximum distance and then 2 zoom ins, and that's about it. There is no panning here. Another downside, you just see the route. There's also no on-the-fly adjustments. You can't do the long hold and adjust the data field. You have to go to the app instead. Once you're actually on the route, you would see total time, mileage, and all the speed. You could do laps by pressing the top button, so that'll apply a lap. And then you can even pause this ride by doing the bottom right button. So you can see now I paused it. I can go back home. I can continue or end, or even do a route on the fly. So if you decide to do the route now, you can go pick it and then add to ride. The other weird thing about this computer is you can see there's actually no time display. You have to press home, and this is where you would see the time on the top and the percent battery remaining. So those are also not visible when you're riding. You go back to resume. There also is a little home screen, so if you have notifications enabled, you can swipe down. You can adjust the backlight here. You can turn off the sound or turn it back on. There's a long battery setting, which will extend the battery life by reducing GPS accuracy. And then there's a second page here, which would have notifications if you had the phone enabled. So pretty simple, but some of the little annoyances are like the fact that you can't see the battery status and you can't really zoom in the map view very much. Now let's take a look at the computer on our bike. To start the ride, you have to either select a route or your profile. There is no one button start like most computers. There's no default profile. So here you can see I can select a route. You just get that kind of breadcrumb view, which is a little bit odd. You can't zoom in. Then you pick the profile you want, and then you have to press start. So a little bit tedious, but once you start it, the GPS signal comes pretty quickly, and then setting up all your sensors is easy. It's compatible with the radars, lights, DI2, everything you'd want, with a ton of options for what to display. The display itself is really nice too, at 2.8 inches with a color touchscreen. The hardware on this thing is great, nice and responsive. Whether you're wearing gloves or not wearing gloves, you can see it's very easy to swipe between views. You can swipe down to view some of the notifications and then the backlight settings. Some of the weird things about this computer though are things like the fact that you can't view the battery status or the current time. So you can see here, the top bar doesn't display those. You have to pause the ride and then find it. And then here you can see some of the turn notifications. They're just basic arrows with the street name if you've created the route on the app. If you load the route through GPX, everything becomes unnamed road, which is unfortunate, especially if you're riding somewhere new. You do have cool features like this radial display. It has a color coding, the min, max, average, all displayed in one area, and a feature I really like. The map view is not bad. You have nice detail, but you do have very limited zoom levels. So if you do get lost, and you want to zoom out to figure out which direction to go, you can't do that. It's very limited, which is a weird software limitation. And you also can't pan the map, which is another feature that's not here. You can only zoom in and out. And the other thing with the prompts is I found them to be a little bit late. They show up at 1,000 feet, and then they don't show up again until you're at 300 feet, which means you can miss turns, and that's something that happened to me. I would often miss a turn because the notification came up so late. The other issue with this one is sometimes the prompts are a little bit misleading. So here you can see it says go straight, and then it has immediate turn at 50 feet. So again, you can miss turns. So if you're riding somewhere new, I definitely recommend staying in the map view. If you're not riding somewhere new, I think it's a decent computer. It's pretty well priced and it has a big color touchscreen. While the UI isn't the best, you can do your Strava syncing to really analyze rides elsewhere. And the syncing seems to work pretty well. So overall, it's a nice computer, but it has a lot of these little UI issues, and the navigation is something I wouldn't rely on, especially if you're riding in somewhere newer. We did have to pull out our phone to kind of find our way home. So aside from the navigation, I think everything's pretty well designed. I would have really liked to see a climb challenge feature, which would show you the coming climbs, especially at this 150 price point. That would have really set this computer apart. Or at least see an altitude chart. That's another feature missing here. But otherwise, it's a pretty solid computer. It's a good alternative, and obviously budget priced, but the software is a little bit lacking. Now let's take a look at the Magene app. It's actually called OneLapFit App, which is really confusing. You would have thought it would be called the Magene app, but instead they've gone with this. So I'm not sure if they're sharing with other computers or it's just an odd name choice. It's pretty simple, especially on the Android one. You have 3 tabs on the bottom. It's a little confusing to figure out what exactly you're doing, but you can see up here it's automatically syncing in the background right now. You have the home page, which will show you any of your recent rides. You can see now it's uploaded. It's very simple display. So if I pick one of my previous routes, you can see you get a nice map view, basic stats and analysis. You do get a graph here, so you can press it, and then you can see I can adjust the value and see what's there. You get the elevation chart. Again, clicking in will go into the landscape mode. So it's not bad, but obviously you want to use Strava or other apps if you really want to get deeper into there. You can see the display is really basic too. It's kind of an odd way to show it. It's not clear what exactly you did, and there's no little images of the actual routes. Then if I go to calendar, you can see kind of a calendar view where you've done all your training, stats, and then performance management. So you get some basic kind of feedback, but it's not like a Garmin device. Now to actually find the computer, again, a little bit confusing. You have to click me, and then my bike computer. And then you click the actual computer. So I've already synced it once. You can see now I'm on here and I have my routes, the GPS synchronization, the profile. So you have road and commute. So you can add another one if you wanted to. Course training, simulated route, smart assistant, and general setting. Starting with the routes, this is actually the route you've actually done before or downloaded. You can download routes through 2 different options, GPX. So you can download the actual route from a third party and then upload it here. There are some problems with that. All the turns end up being unnamed road, which is quite confusing. Otherwise, you can create a new one through the app. So you can see I can import it or create it manually. Now, it is pretty basic. You just have to drop a little point where you want to go to the next point, and what you can see, it'll kind of fill it in between. So I'll cancel that out, but you can do that. It is a little bit tedious, especially with more complicated routes. You generally just want to import it. Unfortunately, you can't really synchronize with Strava or other third-party routes. Instead, you really have to manually do it or just import the GPX file. Once you actually have a route, you can see, unfortunately, you can't zoom it in either, which is another weird UX issue. As with a lot of these smaller companies, the hardware is great. It just feels like the UX is missing, so I can see my route here, but I can't zoom in. And you can see there's obviously some issues with this route, as it kind of missed some waypoints, and you can't really correct it either. If I go back here, again, profile, so if I go to my road profile, I can pick the color, do a couple small things, go to settings, and this is where you can actually do some of the page settings, which is nice. So you can do some customization. You can see you can swipe through the different pages. And then for each area, you can actually change the full layout. So you can see change layout. It is a little bit limited. You can only get that big radial view if you do almost a full half screen. You can't make it any smaller. But you do have quite a bit of options all the way up to this 10 columns. So if you really want to get crazy, you can show all your data. But again, for the radial view like this, you're limited. You can see I can show different options here. Max speed, minimum. Cadence has everything you'd want from lap times. You have the heart rate, percent thresholds. Power, you have tons of options as well. Different averaging windows. You have distances, percent gradient, and they can take up different amount of space. You can see this one's kind of crazy to take up such a big space without a radial graph, but you could do that. Ascent, descent, time, calories, GPS navigation. There's also other here, so you can do the gear display, which is pretty cool. So if you have Di2 or Shimano or the SRAM, you can actually see some of the stats. And then there's a blank one, which is a little bit weird, so you can just fill in the area if you wanted to. So we go back here, you can see I've already customized a little bit with my radial display. And with so many pages, you can really do anything you want. And you can see this one has everything in kind of this nice big grid format. There is no altitude chart, unfortunately. You can see you're just limited to kind of the basic lap display, different field setups, or the map view. Once you're happy with that, you can save it. I'll go ahead and discard it. And then you have some more general settings. So I'm going to repeat some of the stuff in here. Notifications. You can do the altitude calibration. It has my vehicles, which is confusing, but it's actually the bike settings. So you can switch the bikes here under that one profile. And that's pretty much the major settings. So it is simple, but it would have been nice if the UI had some more improvements like the zooming in and better display of your previous routes. Now let's compare the Magene with other computers on the market. Here we have the iGPSPORT BSC300. You can see the screen is a little bit smaller, and you don't have the touchscreen navigation that you do get with the Magene. So that's one downside. The iGPSPORT BSC300 is also pretty small. You can see more compact, and the screen just feels a lot tighter compared to the bigger font size on the Magene. The nice thing about iGPSPORT is they do offer the climb challenge feature, so you can see your altitude, which is available in their newer software, which is currently not available in the Magene, and it's something hopefully they'll add. But otherwise, you get the same Garmin mount, you get the USB Type-C charging ports, and similar features. The Magene is just very affordable given the color touchscreen. The more typical computers at this price point, something like the Shanren Max 30, which is a very basic grid design. So you can see very simple. You have a predefined layout, nice high contrast screen with more screen versus bezel. So the Magene does have quite a bit of bezel on the bottom. You can see just a little bit thinner as it kind of that goes down into the base with a little thinner profile that makes it feel smaller. Bryton is probably their more direct competitor here. So this is the Bryton 750 SE. So you can see the screen is a little bit taller. You get similar bezels on top and bottom, but it just feels more balanced because it's equal. With the Magene, you have a bigger bottom section. This is the dark mode. So you actually do get the color touchscreen, which is nice. And you can navigate up and down. And they both feel similar, but the nice thing about the Bryton is they kind of conceal some of its thickness. It also is quite thick, but with the smooth body and the little white contrast, it does help break it up. The nice thing about the Bryton is their software is a little bit better, so easier to use, and you don't have to use the app for a lot of the things. You can still configure things and set up things directly on here. So you can even change data field by doing a long hold, which is something you can't quite do with the Magene yet. If you really want something nicer, you can actually get the Bryton S800, so quite a bit bigger, thinner and big screen. What's great about this is just it's so large. You can really see everything in one place, which is nice. And it obviously costs quite a bit more, $400 versus the $159 on the Magene. So the big thing with the Magene is you really do save quite a bit of money. If you want a colored touchscreen, it's hard to beat at $159. Now let's go over the pros and cons for the Magene C606. What I like about it is you have long battery life. It's a larger battery, so you don't have to really charge this that often. It also has a responsive and clear colored touchscreen that you don't typically see at this price point. Magene has also made it compatible with quite a few sensors, so you can do radars, lights, DI2, and everything in between. Some of the cons for this computer is the fact that you do get late turn notifications. They show up at 1,000 feet, and then again at 300. It would be nice if they show up a little bit earlier and had more detail on the prompts. Also, the map view has limited zoom levels, which is really frustrating because you can't pan it either. So you really can't see where you're going further out on the ride. You're very limited. And with this computer, you do lack the climb challenge or an equivalent feature to at least see the altitude you've covered. Taking everything into account would give the computer a 7.8 out of 10. It has great hardware, but the software is a little bit lacking. Little things like the zoom level on the map view and some of the navigation prompts kind of make this frustrating to use if you want to really rely on navigation. Thanks for watching this review. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can see more content from us on our website at thesweetcyclist.com, as well as follow us on Instagram at thesweetcyclist. This is The Sweet Cyclist reminding you to enjoy the ride.